Okay. Okay, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Now, continuing breathing and exchange of gases. Breathing and exchange of gases. The first part of the lesson, we saw the respiratory tract and the questions oriented. Now, with the breathing and exchange of gas, mainly you will have the alveolar, structure of the alveolar, and diffusion membrane, thickness of the diffusion membrane, and what are the three layers of the diffusion membrane. So we have to start with the alveoli or alveolar sac, and then you will have the diffusion membrane. Diffusion membrane. Now we saw in this diffusion membrane last class, we saw that there is alveolar sac. This is alveolar sac lined by a single layer of epithelium. That's the character of the alveoli. Air, incoming air. Then these are lined by simple squamous epithelial cells. Single layer of cells, epithelial cells. Surrounding that, you have the blood vessel. The thin capillary surrounding the entire alveoli, purely diagrammatic, and the capillary, and one capillary blood is flowing downward, the other capillary blood is flowing outward. According to the quality of the blood inside the capillary, we can denote it as a capillary of the artery or capillary of the vein. You know very well the blood which goes out is a oxygenated blood, and the capillary which carries the oxygenated blood will be moving upward. The flow will be upward. And the capillary which is the blood is flowing down is the venous blood. Venous blood or deoxygenated blood. Now deoxygenated blood, the vessels are different. This is pulmonary artery. Vein of the capillary of the pulmonary artery. Capillary of the pulmonary artery, and this is capillary of the pulmonary vein. Capillary of the pulmonary vein. Of pulmonary vein. Pulmonary vein. Repeat, explain, and then orient the questions on top of that. So mainly the Neet point of view only we have to train. Now that's right. Okay. Now this one. Now here, what are the things which we should know about the filtration, diffusion membrane? What is diffusion? Now here is blood. The capillary carrying the blood is that is arterial blood has got more CO2. Venous blood in the case of pulmonary artery and vein is totally different from systemic circulation. Pulmonary circulation, pulmonary artery brings the impure blood or deoxygenated blood or blood with more oxygen. That's why due to the blue. And the vein, normally veins will carry impure blood in a systemic circulation. What is systemic circulation? Blood goes out of the heart, supply the upper and lower part of the body. Upper part of the body is head, neck, and upper limb. Lower part of the body, below neck, throughout up to the toe. So the veins bring the impure blood from the upper and lower extremities of your body, upper and lower part of your body. But pulmonary vein is an exemption because it takes the blood from the lungs to the heart. So this circulation, blood from the heart to the lungs and back to the lungs, is a pulmonary circulation. Now, from the heart all over the body back to the heart, the systemic circulation. Now, if you draw the next chapter, when you go into the circulation and the structure of the heart, you will know. A diagrammatic figure they will give you and give you an arrow diagram and ask you which represents. The arrow represents. Suppose they have a heart This is a basic thing which you would have studied already. That you have upper two chambers in the heart and the lower two chambers in the heart. Now this is atrium, atrium. This is ventricle division. Now this is on the left side of the hand is the right atrium and right ventricle, left atrium, left ventricle. How the flows from the left atrium, that is from the left ventricle, the blood vessel comes purely diagrammatic and it divides into two. This is the main aorta supplying the upper part of the body, come back to the right atrium, superior vena cava. And this is the upper extremity. Then another branch comes to the lower part of your body, entire lower part of your body, and back again as draining by the inferior vena cava into right atrium. So this up till this you have got oxygenated blood. Now the vessel which comes out of the left ventricle will carry. One sec. Now the artery, the biggest aorta which comes out of the left ventricle is purely oxygenated blood. Same thing. Then the one which follows from the lower extremity which goes towards the heart is deoxygenated. Now this is vein, the veins carry the blood to the heart. So now this circulation that is starting from the heart, lower part of the heart, and reaching the diagonally on the upper part, see left ventricle and right atrium. Now this is known as systemic circulation. Now another one is it is not double. This is what you mean by double circulation. Now the systemic circulation, pulmonary circulation, and systemic. So systemic circulation all over the body. Pulmonary circulation is only lung. That is from left ventricle. Now what happens? The other blood vessel which goes to the lung. It goes to the lung and then comes back to the purified left atrium. This is a reversal of the previous one. That is one sec. If I draw the blood vessel, the blood which is leaving the right ventricle is deoxygenated or impure blood. Okay. Now this goes to the lung. Now this is lungs, and the blood, the vessel which carries the blood from the lungs to the heart. Now this is lung, this is heart. From the lungs, the blood vessel which carries the blood to the left atrium. Now this is circulation, systemic circulation. Now how will we mark the blood? Now in the case of artery, which leaves the right ventricle, it's a pulmonary artery. All the other arteries of your body will carry oxygenated blood, but pulmonary artery will carry deoxygenated. In a simple language, impure blood. But you should not use the word impure, but the lower classes, being in a higher class, you should use the word deoxygenated or oxygenated. Because impurity is not oxygen. Impurity is a common word. In your body, there are many arteries carrying impure blood. Impurity means depending on what for example, you take renal artery. Renal artery carries all nitrogenous waste. So the renal artery also carries impure blood. And take the hepatic portal vein. Hepatic portal vein run the blood circulation to the liver. That also carries excess of glucose and amino acid. In a way, it is an impurity. Whenever a substance in excess beyond the optimum level in your blood, that has to be excreted out of your body, sent out of your body. Whether it is a metabolic excreta or undigested matter. So, metabolic excreta mainly. So, impure word you should not use. You must use the word oxygenated and deoxygenated, particularly when you are doing the respiratory system. So one exemption for the pulmonary artery is what all the arteries in your body, which is arising from the heart, all these arteries will carry the blood which is oxygenated blood fully. But pulmonary artery alone will carry deoxygenated. Now, what is the character of the artery? Artery carries the blood out of the heart. It goes out of the heart, and veins will come to the heart. Superior vena cava into the heart, inferior vena cava to the heart, pulmonary artery. Similarly, the oxygenated blood that is carried by the pulmonary vein, all the veins will carry impure blood except the pulmonary vein, which carries the pure blood back to the heart. So when you come to the respiratory system, we won't use pulmonary artery or pulmonary vein the word. We use deoxygenated blood and oxygenated blood. It implies automatically oxygenated means pulmonary vein. Deoxygenated means pulmonary artery. So there are three parts you should know. One is the alveoli, the air in the alveoli. From the air, the alveoli, there is air, and there is main gases present in the alveoli are the respiratory gases, namely O2 and CO2. O2 and CO2. You know very well, air which we breathe out will have more O2 than less CO2. That also depends on the area where you live. Suppose you are living near a factory which is using a lot of sulfur fuel. So the air will be filled with the sulfur dioxide. There are many gases. So polluted air. So that is why the air which you breathe is polluted means the normally the air which you breathe, we are only bothered about O2 and CO2. Pollution, there are many pollution. You know, when gaseous pollution, pollutants are there, particulate pollutants are there. Suppose you are staying in a cement factory, the air which you breathe in will have a fine cement particles. That deposit in your tracheal system. We saw trachea, got cilia, and all these cilia, the thing will get deposited. Suppose you are living near particularly the fuel, incomplete combustion of coal, carbon monoxide, dust particle, leaded the lead is another, lead nitrate is another particle in the vehicle smokes. So when we are talking about respiratory system, we are only bothered about the gases, respiratory gases, O2, and CO2 is not respiratory gas, it's a byproduct of metabolism. What do you mean by that? Oxygen which are taken in breaks down the respiratory substrate or glucose or all the monomers which are taken in food and produces energy, and CO2 and water is a byproduct. So the CO2 and water is a water, of course, it's a minimum excess of water, you will sweat it out or urinate. But excess of CO2 can get out of the body through respiratory system because it's a highly poisonous gas, easily soluble in the plasma, blood plasma, and your brain is the tissue which is more sensitive to CO2. So the CO2 is very important in the respiratory system more than O2 because O2 is mainly used to break down, but CO2 will kill you. That is carbon monoxide poisoning itself will come. Now, if you have seen, particularly people who have the chain smokers will have will tend to fall into the carbon monoxide poisoning of the blood. In that case, the patient won't die. The patient will become mentally aberrated. Aberrated means mentally strange. They start blabbering, incoherent talk, and clots in the brain. So these very harmful effects are produced by the CO2. That is mainly respiratory system is the way with which we are sending out the CO2. But at the same time, the amount of CO2 is necessary also because if the CO2 amount in the blood decreases, it drops very drastically, you will stop breathing. That's what happens in the people which are underwater. They die swimming. They go underwater and die because when they are underwater, they cannot take the breath. CO2 in your body, oxygen is used up, and the food is used up fast, and you are not able to take the oxygen, and you are sinking into the water, and CO2 level is increasing, and the breathing is not there, so you are choked to death. So the CO2 is a dangerous gas which we have to learn in this one. Now, what is meant by double circulation? You have got a pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation. Systemic circulation, main difference is what? In pulmonary circulation, artery will carry the deoxygenated blood, pulmonary vein will carry the oxygenated blood. In systemic circulation, artery will carry the oxygenated blood, veins will carry the gas. This is the main difference between systemic circulation and pulmonary circulation. Now, these two sections come only in the evolutionary level after amphibians from reptiles, birds, and mammals, where the heart has got 4 chambers, where the deoxygenated and oxygenated blood are completely separated. Now, the 4 chambers idea is there is no mixing up of the deoxygenated oxygenated blood. In the frog, only 3 chamber, there is a mixing occurs. So, frog does not a complete double circulation; it will have incomplete double circulation. So we will have 3 branches. That is one completely oxygenated blood will be supplied to the brain proper, deoxygenated towards the lungs, partly to the skin, and the mixed blood is totally to the skin. Because skin is the main area where the exchange of gases occur in the case of aquatic organism like amphibians. Example, frog. Now let's come over to our human body. Now so exchanges between the air and the alveoli, and what air? Oxygen and CO2 in alveoli, and oxygen CO2 in a deoxygenated blood and oxygenated blood. So we have 4 columns in this. See now if we take oxygen and the CO2, this is one of the things in your textbook you should be thorough. Respiratory gases. If we take, we will divide the first is O2 gas. This is gases. Air first outside in the air. The air gets into your lung. That is alveoli. Alveoli or lung. Then deoxygenated blood. DOL, right? DOX. deoxygenated blood. Then the blood becomes oxygenated, OX oxygenated. Then it goes to the tissue. Where the blood goes, the pure blood is supplied to each and every cell. So every cell utilizes the oxygen in your capillary and the blood and uses to break down the food to liberate energy. What is the main aim of respiration? Producing energy by oxidation. So by external respiration, only exchange of gases. We are stopping only with the external respiration. We are not going to the second part of the respiration, as I told you, internal respiration. That completely comes into the cycle, citric acid cycle. There the energy is produced. Glycolysis followed by citric acid cycle and breaking down of ATP. How many ATPs are produced from one molecule of glucose broken down? 48 ATP, and that is another section. Now in zoology, we are sticking under the external respiration only. So now when you take about the gases, we'll take O2 and CO2. So how much is in this? It is nearly 159 mmHg. That is the pressure is mentioned the mmHg. This is what we mean by PCO2. Now PO2 and PCO2. When we write PO2, PCO2, partial pressure of oxygen, partial pressure of CO2 in the air first. Now in the air, the carbon dioxide, provided your air is not polluted with the vehicles or the factory where you are using coal, incomplete combustion will produce carbon monoxide and lot of dust particles. Complete combustion of the fuel only will give you the CO2. You can make out that vehicles, they use the adulterated ones with the kerosene lamp. You can see the smoke coming out. That smoke is full of carbon particles. So now average level only. Don't imagine this will be exact amount will be there in the air which you breathe in. But again, I'm telling you, air depends on the area where you live. Now, polluted area, this is the average level of O2 and CO2 should be there. It will vary. Now, when it goes to the alveolar, the oxygen level becomes, I have read mmHg, please, if I write 159, 159 mmHg, that's the meaning. This mmHg you have to add. Now, the next one, when it comes to alveolar, it will become 104 mmHg. But the carbon dioxide level, it increases 0.3, provided the air which you breathe is completely pure or good air, and it will be 40, average level 40 mmHg. Then what happens? Now deoxygenated blood. Deoxygenated blood exchanges the alveolar air. The gas exchanges are the concentration gradient. Diffusion is only. Diffusion is nothing but passive movement according to the concentration gradient. If CO2 is more there and the other side CO2, automatically exchange will be there. So now oxygen from the alveoli has to go into deoxygenated blood. How to remember the number? Automatically deoxygenated blood will have a lesser amount of oxygen and more CO2. So that is, remember these two numbers. This is same 40 and 45. 45 mmHg. Same thing I have write mH alone I write. Now, so oxygenated blood, the deoxygenated blood has got more CO2. It is sent out in the alveoli. And what is the main thing? The CO2 becomes less, O2 becomes less. That's the idea of oxygenated blood. When the blood is purified means what? It is expelling CO2 and accepting O2. So the O2 which is 40 will increase to 95 mmHg. That is exchanges from the alveoli. You have to combine these two together. From alveoli and deoxygen, exchanges between this. But as a result, what will happen? Now the blood gets purified. So the oxygen from here, it goes to the, when it goes here, it will become a oxygenated blood. So oxygenated blood will have 95 and automatically the CO2 level will become 40. Okay, now let's go to the, from where does the oxygenated blood goes? Oxygenated blood goes to tissue. Tissue receives the oxygen. So automatically oxygen level in the tissue should be lesser than 95. And it will release carbon dioxide. So CO2 level in the tissue will be more. So this number is a must for you because it is all given in your mmHg. So this will become 40 mmHg. This is the average data given in your book. Now this year it might vary with 0.1, 0.2. Instead of 159, there may be 162, 62. There is no 2 because the textbook is definitely given this number. In case if they give you, the range will not increase more than 5 units. Maybe 159 to 165 or 40 to 50, 40 to 45, 45 to 50. Just 5 units difference only can be there. This is the average amount. Now you have to know this correctly. The partial pressure of oxygen to repeat in the air, the outside air is 159 mmHg, of course mmHg. Now carbon dioxide is very less provided where air is not polluted. Sorry, this is the data given. It will vary from place to place. When it comes to the lungs, first it fills the alveoli. Alveoli, the oxygen level is decreasing to 104. Okay, now the CO2 level is gradually increasing because alveoli you already will be getting the CO2 from the tissue level, from the venous blood. CO2 gets into it, automatically only 0.3 comes up to maximum 40. And when the air in the alveoli has got more oxygen, now deoxygenated blood. What is deoxygenated blood? This blue. It has got more CO2 and less oxygen. It must have less oxygen than the alveolar air. Then only exchange can occur. So automatically the oxygen here will be lesser than 104. So from the 104, this oxygen more from the alveoli goes into the exchanges. As a result, this 40 becomes 95. And similarly, CO2 is sent out, excess of 45 is exchanged the 40, and the oxygen is received, so automatically CO2 is becoming less. CO2 45 becomes 40. So when in the blood, see, there is no separate capillary, there is no artery vein. The capillaries are continuous tube. Only the quality of the blood flowing there and the direction of the blood will vary. Capillary is not like artery or vein. Artery or vein, we can say all the arteries carry oxygenated blood, all the veins carry deoxygenated blood. But capillaries, there is no set of capillaries carrying oxygenated and capillaries carrying deoxygenated blood. Capillary is a continuous tube and same structure, physiology, single layer of epithelium. That's the main character. So that anything can diffuse in and out of the capillary easily. What is flowing in the capillary? Blood. In one direction, it will be downward, another direction. Capillaries are a continuous tube. So depending upon the quality of the blood in that, we can say it's a capillary of a vein, we can say capillary of the artery. You know very well, artery has got oxygenated, vein has got deoxygenated. So artery of the vein, we call it as artery of the capillary of the artery, we call arteriole. But take it in your head, there is no separate arteriole, no venule. Now this is called venule. There is no separate blood vessel in your body called venule or arteriole. They are both are capillaries. In one, quality of the blood flowing there vary. In venule, impure blood or deoxygenated blood will flow. In arteriole, oxygenated blood will flow. The direction varies. In your systemic circulation, the veins will go towards the heart. In the pulmonary circulation, veins will come away from the heart. Similarly, all the arteries come out of the heart in the case of systemic circulation. In venous circulation, the arteriole goes towards the heart. The direction is different in the lung and your body. Systemic circulation, pulmonary circulation, you must keep in your head. That is called double circulation. Now, this is the partial pressure of these are the four things. Air, then alveoli, deoxygenated. What happened deoxygenated? The exchange, gas is exchanged, oxygen is exchanged. So automatically from the alveoli, oxygen is it will become 40 becomes 95. At the same time, the carbon dioxide is given out, so mixes out. So 45 will decrease to 40. So the deoxygenated blood have more oxygen and less CO2. That doesn't mean oxygenated blood is purely devoid of CO2. You know very well blood carries CO2 as well as O2. Now the respiratory gases both are carried in the blood. Oxygen is carried mainly in the HB, hemoglobin, and lesser amount in plasma. But carbon dioxide is carried plasma, RBC as well as bicarbonate salt. Both the gases are in the blood. Just because it is oxygenated and deoxygenated, you should not think it's totally it has got oxygen, totally it has got carbon dioxide. So all the blood is CO2 and O2. Similarly, when the oxygenated blood is supplied to the tissue, cells take oxygen. So automatically the oxygen level in the tissue, because they are taking the oxygen and utilizing it. So the 95 will become in the case of the tissue blood supplying the cell. Once a cell takes oxygen, the level of O2 will decrease. It's like more or less it's getting polluted. So automatically CO2 will increase. So the blood is getting Pure blood goes to the tissue or oxygenated blood goes to the tissue and gets deoxygenated. So see, these two will be similar. The CO2 in the tissue question, how will it be? They will ask you just normal question. First, I'll tell you, I'll draw this column and put one of the things, I'll write this, say for example, you know very well these are the block. Okay, I will leave one of the block. I'm sorry. I will leave this as A. I'll write this as A. This is one of the question. Then another one, I may leave this as, say this also B. Let it be. Let it be B. This is a fact. How are we going to face Neet in this? Gases, partial pressure of gases alone we are talking about, and the alveolar, structure of alveoli. So what are the Neet questions we are going to face on this? This tabular column, you should know by heart, I told you, it's a mandatory. You should know the value. And in the first question, will be they'll give you a table like this way and leave the gaps in between. The titles will be the air, alveoli, deoxygenated, oxygenated tissue. This goes in order. Air, the air, then alveoli, deoxygenated, then oxygenated, and tissue. This is the order. So the block will be given in the block certain areas they'll wipe out. Even option. Fill in A, B, C, D, E, a few things they'll give you. Oxygen. Now you have to fill in, now the column is already given. That is, it represents what O2 is by the side. So you have to write the partial pressure of O2 in air. And what is this? It is CO2. You have to write the partial pressure of CO2 in the tissue. So these values you should know by heart. Now another one, what will they say? They'll give you the partial pressure of O2 in the, they will change this number. Now B, option 1. Now A, B, C, let it be A, B, C. How the answer will be? Option 1. I'll remove the diagram. This, what is there, we needed systemic and pulmonary circulation. First word is double circulation. One is what? Blood going to the lung and coming back to the heart, pulmonary. Systemic is blood going out of the heart, coming back to the heart. So first question there is, what are the two types of circulation? What is double circulation? What is meant by double circulation? Or they may give you a diagram. This diagram can be given easily. Like they'll put a heart structure like this way. 4 chambers they'll put. They'll divide like this. And A, B, C, D they'll give. And they will make an arrow from, yes, correct. It goes to the, finally what will happen? Diagonally it will come. The arrow will be like this. What do you mean by that? It leaves, no, the arrow upward. It leaves C, comes to A, and leaves D and comes to B. Both the sides. See, it can be like this. So, in the simple diagram, they can ask you double. What point you should know in the diagram? Double circulation. Then what is the difference in double circulation? In a systemic circulation, arteries carry oxygenated blood. In pulmonary circulation, veins carry oxygenated blood. Veins carry deoxygenated blood. System is ulta, opposite. That's all only in this double circulation, and particularly double circulation is present only in the evolution reptile, birds, mammals, and after amphibians incomplete double circulation. There's a single circulation in the case of fish. Next chapter when you do, you will see to that. Now we are in the partial this exchange of gases, structure of alveoli and gas. This is the first question. How the option A will be given? Fill in the blanks. So option A. See, A option. One B is equal to 20 mmHg. mmHg will be given properly. Now A can be 50 or 40. Now here A should be A is equal to 40. Then 40 and C is equal to 40. Like this, in one of the option, all the three will be correct. All the three will be correct. Now in one of the option, they'll give you A is equal to 159. And B is equal to 40. No, A is equal to not 159, that is 40. Okay, let me read this. This is a wrong answer. Third answer, A here. What should I write here? 40. What should I write here? 159. What should I write here? 45. So A is 40 and B is equal to 159. This is the correct option. And C is equal to 45. So they will change the values of the pressure in A, B, C and ask you which is the correct, pick up the correct answer. This is simple. And next question, how can they be? In which tissue the amount of oxygen is similar, roughly equal, more or less equal between the oxygen pressure is equal between, now roughly equal in a sense, take the tissue. Now here what should be there? 45 should be there. So the CO2 currently, a partial pressure of CO2 is 45 in the case of deoxygenated blood and the tissue. And here what will I write? 40. So partial pressure of oxygen is similar in the oxygenated blood and the tissue. They'll give you one question, 4 options they'll give you. That is, this is one question. Okay, this is called. Now the second question we got it. The PCO2 and PO2. Now this PO2 means what? Partial pressure of oxygen is more or less the same, more or less same. Same A between oxygenated blood and tissue, or between B, any two. Any two they will compare. You have got one here also is there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In this any two they will compare. They'll compare and give one option will be correct. If you see that the oxygen in the case of oxygenated blood and tissue is same. CO2 in the case of no oxygen, deoxygen, CO2 is same between the deoxygenated blood and the tissue. Oxygen in the oxygenated blood is more oxygen. What they can ask you, oxygen is more, so more or less the same between the alveoli and the oxygenated blood. So alveoli is 104, this is 195, that's why almost equal. So alveolar air and oxygenated blood will be in PCO2 will be more or less the same between these two. But CO2 is mainly deoxygenated and the tissue. This is another question they can ask you. Or multiple choice, they can give you directly, this is one. Or they can make a master following even. PCO2. Now just give the master following. How can they word master following? See, this is one. What is the first one? First one is a table comparing leaving the block below. Second one is within the block comparing the PO2 in any two columns. Now that is there, it is more or less the same. If we compare the PCO2 is same in deoxygenated blood and the tissue, more or less the same. Oxygen level is more or less the same in alveoli and the purified blood, oxygenated blood. So this is another type. Of these 5 columns, they'll ask more or less the PCO2, O2 is equal. More or less the word will be there because exactly the same amount may not be there because it's 159 and 104. This will be actually for how much this will be 159. 159. This is another question in this tabular column. Another question they can ask you, master following. Now they can ask you the master following like this. They can frame anything. Now the alveoli O2, O2 here and CO2 here. They can give you 1, 2, 3, 4 values. Now alveoli, O2 alone you take. Now you can make 2 separate columns. That is O2 alone I can have a master following instead of both the gases. CO2 alone I write like this. Now they'll ask you what they will write these values. That is alveoli or lungs. They can give you lung or alveoli, deoxygenated blood, and I'll come back again. Oxygenated blood tissue. And these values they will mix up. Now what should come? If it is oxygen in the lung, it should be 104. So I can write 104 here. 104 mmHg. This is very simple. They can make a tabular column by CO2, PCO2 as well as PO2. Okay, I'm writing down. Now we are talking about PCO2. PCO2 in the lung will be 0.3 only. So it will be the lung is 40 mm. Yeah, that is. Yeah, as in here. Lung 40 mm. So we can reorganize the whole thing. You understood that? You can mix the values and give in any column and ask you in the choice they give you. This will be 1, 2, 3 or first choice. Now A to they may give you 1A, 2B, 3C, like that way. This is one master. Master following for CO2 as well as O2 can be done. So within this tabular column, another thing they can only up, instead of giving deoxygenated, they can give you pulmonary artery. Why? Artery has got deoxygenated blood. So they can ask you, if they say arterial blood, you should only think of systemic artery. But they won't word it so tricky. Arterial blood, in the case of your respiratory system, deoxygenated blood represents the arterial blood. Oxygenated blood represents the venous blood in pulmonary circulation. So you have to be very careful when you're reading the question whether they meant, they will give you a clue. They won't that simply say arterial and venous blood, because you know very well it differs from pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation. Though we are bothered about the pulmonary circulation, and it, sometimes they can mislead you by using the word artery or vein. So this complete partial pressure alone, you can have so much of type of questions in the case of Neet. Sometimes you can choose the incorrect statement. Correct statement. Incorrect statement, correct statement is very easy, because I can give you all the values correctly and change one of the value. That is, I'll give you like this way. Choose the correct statement which is partial pressure of oxygen in the alveoli is 104, that is correct. Partial pressure of oxygen in the oxygen, that is correct. Partial pressure of O2, O2, no, CO2 in the case of deoxygenated blood is 45, that's correct. And they'll give you statement. Sometimes all the post statements can change, and you have to take the how many statements are correct. Out of four statements, two they may be correct. See, Neet question is totally, we are only bothered about facing the fact in the Neet, because you will be studying it throughout in your school. But how to utilize the fact in the Neet point of view is our training. So within this small diagram, you can have 5 different types of. There is no diagram. This is a diagram sketch. So within the sketch, they can model upon pulmonary artery and pulmonary vein. Then they think of pulmonary circulation, only lung and concerned to the lung and the air. But if the same thing comes in the systemic circulation body part, it will be different. Deoxygenated will be vein, pulmonary vein won't be oxygenated. Oxygenated in the case of pulmonary, in the case of systemic, it will be deoxygenated. So these are the tabular master following they can ask you. Fill in the blanks. They just leave column empty, that they can give you just like fill up the blanks. Then correct, choose the correct statement. How many statements are correct? All these can be so. To know this, what are you supposed to know thoroughly? These values should be recorded in your head permanently. First 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. Yeah, alveolar, deoxygenated, oxygenated tissue. And nowhere you should change these values. There should not be any doubt in your head about the PO2, PCO2 in all these 5 places. Then you can attempt all those questions. Now the next one is this one. Now in this, what are the questions? I think I already told you about this. This is a diagrammatic question. Though it's a simple diagram, but here how the questions can be worded in this. Now this is the capillary. Capillary, there is no separate capillary. I already told you, only the quality of the blood varies from capillary to capillary. Another one is character. The capillary is lined by a thin layer of epithelium. This diagram, you read the diagram properly, because they will definitely, in the case if they want to show the thing, they will show you O2 plus and CO2 lesser. Minus means lesser. Yeah. Now in this, what are the things they can draw the? This is wall of the alveoli. This is wall. This is wall of the capillary. Both are single layer of cells. That's the basic principle. What is the idea of the single layer of cell? Anything can diffuse easily in and out. Whatever is inside the tube can come out here in the sac, and whatever is in the sac can come into the tube. So wherever in your body there is a single layer of epithelium, that is the character of capillary. Capillaries are the thinnest blood vessels where their wall has got a single layer of epithelial cells to enhance, to help in the diffusion of material in and out of the tube. What is even the water? If it's a liquid, tissue fluid, excess of water from the excess of liquid from the blood can diffuse, ooze out, that becomes the tissue fluid. And if the blood carries more food, or the simple language, glucose or amino acid. Now, it is surrounding a cell. The cell needs glucose. It can take from there. Now, this processing only, you are studying about transport across the membrane. Passive transport, active transport, facilitated transport, or osmosis. So, all these processes are involved in exchange between the capillaries.
நீங்க ரெஃப்ரெஷ் பண்ணிட்டு பாருங்க திரும்ப நாங்க வந்து வெளியே
something wrong. Sorry. Let me stop. Okay. Now the diagrams here. Now you know very well. This flows upward from the alveoli. The flows downward. Okay. Now the this is a single layer of epithelium. I have shown this. I don't want to draw a little bit bigger. You want this to be bigger than this? Okay. Now one second. Now purely diagrammatic. Don't imagine the alveoli will be so big. Now this is epithelial lining layer of the alveoli. Now this is a capillary. Neither the capillary is so thick like an artery. Now this is one wall of capillary. This is the one wall, inner wall of the capillary. And you have another wall of the capillary. Purely diagrammatic because to understand the different three layers of the diffusion layer. Now this is the wall of the capillary. So fully I've got the cells. If it is a columnar epithelium, how will you make out of the diagram? The nucleus will be towards the base. Suppose I draw the epithelial basement membrane, the epithelium, nucleus will be below towards the base. You have one cell here, another cell here, another cell here, all the nuclei will be below. This is a character of columnar epithelium. So cuboidal epithelium, you can make out in the diagram, it will be more or less in the center. This will be cuboidal epithelium. Squamous epithelium, they will draw a little bit flat and like this, like a fusiform. This is squamous epithelium. So with the diagram itself, you can make out what type of epithelium is there. Now this is all we know about the epithelium is single layer, but it's a squamous epithelium only. But the drawing will be like this. And the epithelial cells are based on the basement membrane. So the cells here is the air, O2 and CO2, mixture of air. And instead of O2 and CO2, I should use the word air, that's all. Air. Now, this is the basement membrane of the cells. So the cells are facing inside like this. The cells are facing inward. Now this is the basement membrane. And you have a capillary space. Now this is fully with your connective tissue and the membranes are very close to one another, forming a fused tissue like. That's the second area. And this is the wall of the epithelium, endothelium. Endothelium or inner wall of the blood vessels are called endothelium. Now this is also epithelial layer. So how the cells of this epithelial layer will be, the basement membrane will be here, the cells will be facing inward like this, inside. So this is the basement membrane. Now this is a cell facing inside, the gap in between or a narrow capillary space where the basement membrane connective tissue material, this is one layer, then basement membrane of the epithelium of the alveoli. So the first one is the basement membrane of the alveoli, basement membrane of alveoli, then the capillary space is the connective tissue, and next one is basement membrane of the capillary. Now these three together is known as diffusion membrane. Diffusion membrane, through which whatever diffusion is a free flow of molecules across the membrane according to concentration gradient. Wherever it is more, suppose there is O2 here and CO2, O2, CO2. If the CO2 is not going down, here blood is flowing up. You know very well the blood which is coming in is through pulmonary artery. It will be impure blood, deoxygenated blood. The deoxygenated blood CO2 will be more. Alright, now when it comes down, what happens in this? O2 will be less. So in this, O2 is lesser, minus CO2 is more here. So when the blood goes backwards, now what happens here? Now O2 is between these two. Let us leave that part. Now O2 is here more, here it is less. So O2 from here is passing in here. So CO2 is more here and less here. So CO2, when you talk about this, O2 is more and CO2 is less. Okay, so since you have got O2 here, from the alveoli, oxygen gets into the deoxygenated blood. The CO2 from the deoxygenated blood gets into the alveoli, the backward flow. Understand, this is CO2 and this is O2. This is O2. So this is the exchange which you are talking about in the case of exchange between the alveoli and deoxygenated blood. Now alveoli, what is the amount of oxygen? Come back to your table. What's the amount of oxygen in the alveolar area? 104. Now CO2 is already, because diffusion occurs, it's 40. Now what is the oxygen concentration in the case of deoxygenated blood? Is only 40. Here it is 40, here it is 104. Oxygen is 104 here, here it is 40. So what will happen? Oxygen from here it is 104. Oxygen which is 104 inside, and here it is only 40. Oxygen is 40. So exchange occurs from 104 to 40. So this 40 becomes 95 by the time it comes out here. So this 40 O2 has become 95. This is oxygenated blood. So when the oxygenated blood, when it comes out, by the time the blood comes to the other side, now the oxygen is exchanged. Now there is the oxygen from 104, it goes inside, the 40 increases, it comes to O2 as 95. This is what they are reading on the table. Now what is in this diagram? They won't ask you the gases in this diagram. They will ask you in the tabular column only the word. Now here what all they can ask you? Now the labeling. Labeling, three, first what you have to do, what are the labeling they can ask you here? First labeling will be diagram. Now they can ask you, what is this? What's A? Now this is, okay, I'll simply write A, B, and C. So what it is? Simple. Pulmonary artery, arteriole, alveoli, pulmonary vein. They will mix up. Where they mix up artery and vein. They will write this is pulmonary vein, this is artery. Choose. 4 options will be given. They will muddle up the ABC and give you, that's one. Another option here is this. Now sometimes they will give you this part alone. The filtration tissue alone they can make an option. That is, they will give you A and this is B and this is C. A is wall of the alveoli, basement membrane of the wall of the alveoli. Then B is the intercapillary, narrow capillary space. And third one is the basement membrane of the endothelial cell, basement membrane of the endothelium. Instead of capillary, they use the word endothelium of the capillary. So all the three separately they have to label, or they may they'll instead of A, B, C, and D. D is the diffusion membrane. So they can ask this area together on arrow to show you diffusion membrane, or they can ask you separate component of the diffusion membrane. Another one is thickness of a few millimeter thick, that number 2 to 4 millimeter thickness, that thickness you should know. Now this is only in the diagram of exchange. What happens, and this is one of the 3 mark questions in your public exam, you should have given a short answer. Describe the exchange of gases in the lung. So there the marking will be about artery and vein, alveoli, gas pressure, all that you can mark. This is a diagrammatic question. So the 2 parts we finished. One is the partial pressure of the gases and exchange membrane. Okay. Now the next one which we have to go in the respiration, before we come to the transport of gases. Okay, we'll finish with the transport of gases along that. The transport of gases are mainly oxygen and the CO2, you know that. Now the transport of respiratory gases. What is that? O2 and CO2. That's what we mean by. Now let's take O2. 97% of O2, 97% is carried by Hb, hemoglobin. One molecule of hemoglobin can combine with 4 atom of oxygen. Hb4 plus O4. So Hb4O4. That is one molecule of Hb can combine with 4 atoms of oxygen. All right. Now 100 ml of the 100 ml of blood, oxygenated blood, can give you about 5 ml of One other question. Oxygenated blood supplies to tissue. Oxygenated blood from lung to tissue. And deoxygenated supplies O2. Okay. Now, nated from tissue to lung. That means what? CO2. So loading of oxygen occurs in the lung. Distribution is to the tissue. You know, source and sink in the hormone. The place where it is used is a source, and the place where it is utilized is a sink in biology. So the source of oxygen in your blood is lung, and the sink is a tissue where oxygen is used. Similarly, source of oxygen is a tissue major because it's a byproduct of metabolism, catabolism of glucose, and where it is finally sink, where it is disposed in the lung, the flow is different. Now, this is what actually we are talking about, how the oxygen is carried and carbon dioxide is carried. That's what I mean by transport of O2 and CO2. Now, 97% of the O2 is carried by the HB as oxyhemoglobin. Then main important substance is the HB. Now HB is as you know, it's an iron hemoglobin. It's an iron protein complex. Iron protein. Heme and protein. Now this has got a greater affinity for both the gases. It has got affinity for CO2 and O2, and easily it can combine and dissociate with them. That's a peculiar property. Easily it will combine and associate. It's not a like combination reaction, not oxidation. If it is oxidized or reduced, the permanent changes. Combination reaction is temporary. Anytime it can join and it can split back. So I say H2CO3 split into, you can say, bicarbonate ion and water back again, they can combine that are CO2 and H2 back again, it's a reversible reaction. So now it easily combine and it easily combines as well as easily it combines and it combines and dissociate. Dissociate means what? Separate. Association, dissociation. Dissociate with the gases, oxygen as well as CO2. Then it can, 100 ml of HB, arterial blood or HB, can give you 100 ml of, can give you about 5 ml of oxygen. Oxygenated blood, in a sense, oxygenated blood, not HB. No, I will leave that HB here, blood here. Now leave the HB. One molecule of HB can carry one HB molecule, that is HB4, can combine with 4 atoms of O4, 4 atoms of oxygen. It has got, that is the, and second thing, hemoglobin is plenty in the RBC. And what is the structure of RBC? The RBC has to accommodate as much as hemoglobin. As a result, RBC has no nucleus. Once it fully developed, it has no nucleus, no organelle, no mitochondria. It cannot replicate. It cannot multiply, divide. So RBC 120 days lifespan, it has to degenerate. It cannot develop. It cannot reproduce by itself. Remember that the blood cell which cannot multiply or which has no organelle, which has no mitochondria is RBC, fully developed RBC. Why these organelles and mitochondria and the RBC matures it? If it has got RBC nucleus, it is immature or is an abnormal RBC. See, the RBC is a deformed RBC. The matured RBC has no nucleus, no cell organelles, no mitochondria, and mainly to accommodate place for more HB pigment. And how the pigment will be in the RBC cells, it's called host cell. We call that as a host cell. The host cell, you will have a network of fibrous tissue. On that, the pigments, HB pigments will be trapped. On this, you will find the pigments will be trapped. If you have studied starch, biomolecules, starch, iodine solution, It is why it is iodine. Starch is a structural molecular structure of the starch is a network. Primary structure, secondary structure, highly branched network. So in that network, iodine particles will get trapped, iodine droplets will get trapped. That is why when you stain the starch, it will become purplish. It is nothing but a polymer of glucose. So the same manner in the host cell of an RBC, no nucleus, but there is cytoplasm and a network of fibrils. Now this is the fibril network, we call it as. There's a fibril network where the pigment is trapped. Now one question they can ask you, the cell which cannot multiply, the blood cell which does not divide. The blood cell which is absent of, you can easily find out it has no nucleus. That you will study. RBC has no nucleus. But not only nucleus, it has no endoplasm organelles also. Only mainly, it has to hold the pigment. But the exchange of gases, the molecules from the, suppose in the RBC is in the plasma, and the plasma have got the chloride ion, it can get into the RBC, water can get into the RBC, carbon and carbonate salts can get into the RBC, and chemical reaction will go on with the chemical only. There is no, it's not a living cell. To say it is not a living cell because it cannot replicate. Then what the hell is that? Now this RBC is maximum 3 to 4.5 is a milliliter of blood. That gives the red color of the blood and so much of oxygen being carried by that. So the association of hemoglobin with the oxygen, you will see in that oxyhemoglobin curve. How much of oxygen and saturation of the hemoglobin with a partial pressure of oxygen. That is a graph, oxyhemoglobin dissociation graph. Now, first let us see the transport, then we'll cut the dissociation graph. Now, this is a few points about RBC you should know. Then that RBC can easily combine with CO2 also. It will form carboxyhemoglobin. In that case, it will form carboxyhemoglobin. HB hemoglobin. And the hemoglobin average level of the hemoglobin is minimum, average is 12 grams, it should be the units, 12 units. Now, if your HB level in your blood is below 12, you are anemic. Now, you are anemic, they will not take you for any major operations. They have to increase it from 9 also low. It should be minimum 12. Today, any surgical treatment, or that is the average level. If it is among normal individual, must have at least HB. Sometimes what will happen, number of RBC will be, but this is the amount of HB in the RBC. But the number of RBC is different. Number of RBC is a blood count. Blood count will be in million. But HB in each RBC will be like this. The hemoglobin in your blood, a milliliter of blood, sample blood, 12. But the number of RBC in a sample blood will be 4.5 to 6 million. Sometimes what will happen, the number will be normal. You will have a team full of players, 12 players, 15 players. All the 15 are weak. Or half the team is weak. That means what? The strength is HB and the number is the player. So you will have same number, but the amount of HB will be less. So in that case also you will lead to anemic. Sometimes the number of RBCs will be less. That condition also will go to anemia. Another condition is RBC is a deformed RBC, genetic deformed, sickle cell anemia. The RBC structure is deformed. So it is not a normal structure. What is the main aim of RBC? Just to trap, hold as much of pigment I can. When the shape becomes crooked, or when, when the stomach is deformed, you cannot eat much. Same manner, if the shape becomes crooked, you cannot fill in with more pigment. That is sickle cell anemia. In sickle cell anemia, the normal shape will become a sickle. So the HB level, HB pigment cannot be accommodated inside. That is another. Another RBC is a huge RBC. Nucleus does not develop as an abnormal RBC. Then also you have the anemia. Macrocystic anemia, megaloblastic anemia, microcystic anemia. HB and RBC connected with oxygen. The defect is anemia. Anemia are different type, mostly related to RBC. Now, when we are coming to the oxygen, our major role carrier of oxygen is RBC because 97% of O2 in the blood is carried by RBC, by hemoglobin of the RBC. Then only 3% of the O2 is by plasma. By plasma, it can dissolve. Plasma being a liquid medium, it can dissolve in that. Let's come to CO2. Now, the transport of CO2 is ulta. Now, that will only 20 to 25% by RBC, RBCs. Okay. 7%. So 5 to 7%, 5 to 7% by the plasma, and remaining 30% is in the form of salt, bicarbonate salt, which is present in the plasma. This bicarbonate salt formation will exchange between the RBC and plasma. That is chloride shift, and we are not learning that extent. Now, as you should know, CO2. We'll discuss the chloride shift first to get the main idea. Now, the exchange of the CO2 carried 25% with RBC and 7% with the plasma, and 30% mostly by bicarbonate salt in the plasma. Mostly in the plasma. So these are the different rates CO2. So CO2 plasma helps in the transport of CO2 more than transport of O2. Now the O2, this oxygen, how much of oxygen is absorbed? Oxygen is absorbed what? From the oxygenated blood to the tissue. Carbon dioxide from the tissue to deoxygenate. This exchange of oxygen between tissue, lung, that's what I told you, lung to, so exchange is low, oxygen is loaded in the lung and distributed in the tissue. Carbon dioxide loading is done in the tissue and they are carried to the lung. This is what the major exchange site, source and sink. Now this now next is your exchange. Exchange is where exchange is O2 loading is in loading or saturation. Loading means carrying in lung. And deposited or used up or sink. Use or sink. We can say this is a sink, this is a source. Into the blood, mainly into the blood. The loading in the lung, in the tissue. Tissue is distributed to tissue. And CO2 the other way around. It is prepared in the tissue. Source is tissue. Main source is tissue. Why main source is tissue? Because tissue is a place where you have got oxidation. It's a byproduct of oxidation. And mainly in the case of each and every cell, mitochondria, powerhouse, you know all that, the citric acid cycle, and then O2 produced in the tissue, back again carried to the lungs for disposal. Lung or alveoli to be disposed, to be sent out. Alright, now this exchange of gases between lung and tissue and tissue and the lung, it is mainly depends on three factors. Now the three factors are, now this part you know, what the percentage, this percentage. Please keep in your mind, first is you are talking about percentage of the gases in the blood. Blood, three things, one plasma, RBC, in the CO2 in the form of course in the plasma and RBC the major. WBC does not come in the exchange. You know very well WBC has no hemoglobin and it is mainly a defense mechanism. Only RBC and HB in the plasma carrying an exchange. Now in this exchange of gases depends on three factors. Now the exchange with three, one is PO2, partial pressure of oxygen. Second one PCO2. Now third one hydrogen ion concentration. Fourth one is hydrogen ion concentration and temperature. Invariably, these three will go together. If CO2, PCO2 is more, HB also will be, it will also be, PCO2 is more, HB also will be more, temperature will be more. But though there are partial pressure of oxygen and partial pressure of CO2, of these two, partial pressure of CO2 plays a major role than partial pressure of oxygen. Because the pressure of CO2 increases only, the diffusion occurs. Say for example, if you take the exchange between the lung and the tissue, why there is a flow from lung to the tissue? The tissue has got more CO2 more, PCO2 is more, but the lung, the blood which is carried from the blood which is coming from the lung has got O2 is more, O2 is more, but CO2 is less. So as a result, the exchange occurs between the two. In all these factors, PCO2 plays a major role in exchange. Why am I telling you? These are the questions they will ask you, statement questions. Now, when the exchange between the tissue and where is the exchange source and where is the exchange loading, and that is the place where the blood is loaded with oxygen and distributed, and loaded with CO2 and distributed and carried out. This is one of the simple questions. They can exchange, the questions can be, these are the facts. First one, what I told you, the percentage of carrying by the blood. Second one is property of HB. Third point is exchange and source and sink. All these areas, and the fourth fact is the factors affecting. One is percentage of transport. First point is percentage of transport. Both O2 and CO2. O2 and CO2. Second point is what we should know, source and sink, loading and unloading. We will write in a simple language, loading and unloading. That is where it is loaded is O2, loading the gases, loading and unloading. We will write like this, unloading. Simply, where they are saturated, where they are passing the gas. Both, it applies to both the gases, right? Then third one I left out, that is HB. The quality of HB, hemoglobin. Regarding the oxygen, you should know the HB, the molecule, the 100 ml of arterial blood will supply 5 grams or 5 ml of O2. At the same time, 100 of deoxygenated blood will supply 4 ml of, 100 ml of oxygenated blood will give you 5 ml of O2. Now, at the same time, 100 ml of CO2, deoxygenated blood. Deoxygenated means what? CO2 is more. Will supply 4 ml of, will receive, will give you 4 ml of it where? To the lungs, in the lung. Now, this is where? To the tissue. Now, this is where? Arterial blood. Now, this is venous blood. Understand? This is what loading and unloading. The arterial blood, 100 ml of arterial blood carrying the oxygen will supply the tissue about 5 ml of O2. Similarly, the venous blood which is forming in the tissue, 100 ml of venous blood from the tissue will dispose 4 ml of thing in the lungs to be exposed. So this is back again loading and unloading, this value should be there. Then in the case of oxygen, you should know about the HB and the quality of HB. One molecule of HB can combine with how many molecules of it. Now HB is what is HB? Is a heme globulin structure. While the iron is one which you can easily associate and dissociate. That's the property of a heme, ferric and ferrous. So then another one HB RBC not only in the blood here. Regarding the hemoglobin and gas carrying capacity, you should know the cell is carrying maximum amount of hemoglobin, and the amount of hemoglobin becomes less. The amount of hemoglobin is 12 units. Now, if it decreases or increases, then the number of the cells according to the equal number, blood count may be normal, but HB level may be low. So the condition leads will be oxygen carrying capacity is less. That's what you mean by anemia. Anemia is general weakness. They cannot exert themselves. They'll tire out very fast. Oxidation of the food is not there. Then only you get energy. In due course, but there are different types. Abnormal anemias are the microcystic anemia, megaloblastic anemia, sickle cell anemia, and pernicious anemia. Lack of these are the different things connected only with your HB mainly. The last one is the factors. This is very important. The factors affecting. Now, factors which are affecting the transport. Affecting the transport. Transport of what? Transport of O2 and CO2. Now, what are the factors? 4 factors. A is PO2 and B is partial pressure of carbon dioxide. C is partial temperature, and D temperature should be D. C can be hydrogen ion concentration. Hydrogen ion concentration, if you know the other word is pH or H plus ion concentration. That's what you mean by pH. And D will be temperature. Now these two are contradictory. If PCO2 is more and O2 is less, there will be flow according to the concentration gradient, wherever it is more. Where PCO2 will be more, tissue. Where PCO2 will be less, oxygenated blood. Oh, sir. Now, where partial pressure of oxygen will be more, the arterial blood less in the tissue. So, when it is supplying in the tissue, now that CO2 is more means all these factors, you know where PCO2 will be more, where CO2 O2 will be more, where it will be less. PO2 will be more in arterial blood. Arterial blood. And CO2, partial pressure, not arterial blood, in the tissue. It will be more in the tissue. Alright. And it is, of course, in arterial blood and less in the tissue. Less in tissue. From the tissue, it is loaded into the lungs to be exchanged or alveoli. Of course, via the blood, venous blood. Now there's of these factors, partial pressure of carbon dioxide affects this transport more than partial pressure of oxygen. One of the reasons we can say carbon dioxide can be transported in 3 different ways. Maximum in the form of bicarbonate salt in the plasma, as well as the bicarbonate reaction occurs within the RBC also. And but here in the oxygen is mainly transport is through the RBC, not through the plasma. And CO2 is highly soluble in the water, not as much as the oxygen. So if they give you all the 4 factors which affect, now this much. Yeah, after that I'll go to the hemoglobin curve, oxyhemoglobin. Now what we have studied, what is meant by loading, and that is where oxygen is loaded or added on to the carried or deposited from your air into your body, and where it is distributed. Of course, air to the blood, blood through via blood, arterial blood to the tissue. In a textbook, it will be given it is loading in lung and it is distributed in the tissue. In CO2, it is affinity, it is absorbed by the tissue and distributed in the alveoli and passed to the alveoli. So these are, don't simply think artery to vein, vein to artery, or artery to the tissue and tissue to the vein. The textbook wording is the association of O2 is in the alveoli, that is in the alveoli, lung, and distributed to tissue. And CO2 from the tissue distributed to the lung. So you have to be careful in these 2 wordings, because the wordings are in your text, and they can change the wording as oxygen is from the deoxygenated blood to oxygenated blood, or they may give you from oxygenated blood to the tissue. But the particular word used in a book is lung and tissue, tissue and lung. So that's one of the questions. Pick out the correct statement. They'll give you one alone and give you 4 5 model statement. Choose the correct one. Or 1 and 2 are correct, 2 and 3 statement are correct. So one statement question can be from there. Then percentage of transport, percentage of oxygen carried by the blood is by plasma. They'll change the value. Or they can give you direct question. The percentage of oxygen carried by the, see, they can give you like this. Suppose the question can be very funny in a sense. The percentage of oxygen carried in blood. Or sometimes they may give you generally in your body. Now they'll give you A, B, and C and D. They can combine both. Now percentage of oxygen carried in the, they can say 80% or 80 to 97 or 97 direct number in RBC, or they may give you 10% in the 10 or 20% in RBC. One statement they can combine both, and 7%, 97 3% in plasma. I'll keep one number. 97 to 3% in plasma. This is one statement. This is the only correct statement. They can change the percentage in anything. They can add on plasma more and RBC. They may even absurd answers. They can give you 80% in WBC or monocyte instead of WBC. Directly, if they give you WBC, we'll understand. So they may give you neutrophil. Then you'll have a doubt. Or acidophil. If they give you like that way, all these are types of WBC only, not RBC. So they can muddle up in this oxygen alone. This is one question. And sometimes it can be directly asked. That is, the amount of RBC carried, a few percentages they can give you and pick out the correct answer. Pick out the correct answer, pick out the correct statement. Same thing in the case of carbon dioxide, same in carbon dioxide, percentage of carbon dioxide. Then they can give you maximum amount of carbon dioxide. See, maximum amount of AMT means amount of CO2 is carried, is transported. It's not carried, transported. Transported via means through. They can give you A by RBC. Cells itself I can muddle up by platelets. I can give the name of the cell and say by C in the by R. Suppose if we give it by RBC, maximum amount is none, not by RBC. Maximum amount in the blood plasma. That is 70% is in the blood in the plasma, say platelets or by WBC. And I'll muddle up and give you one more by none. This can be fourth option. Suppose if I add one more cell and give you none. If I can add, instead of none, I can write plasma. When you say transported, it is not through the cell. When carbon dioxide is concerned, there is no cell carrying it. The liquid, your blood only carries it. Because cell carrying the cell is only the RBC. No WBC business will come in carrying the gases. Neither platelets. They are clotting, completely different section. WBC is a defense mechanism. Only RBC is involved. Only the red blood cell is involved in this carrying the O2 and CO2. So there is no other cell will come in your answer except RBC and HB, content in that HB. But CO2 is not carried by maximum by our RBC, it is carried by plasma. So watch out, the questions can be direct pick up like this way or misleading. Find out which is sometimes they give everything, all the three and none. So option is correct, option is none. None means it's not a negative answer, it's answer. The answer is none. So you have to word when you go to the Neet. The points you should know, you must have the facts very clearly, point by point in your head. So when they juggle the words in your question paper, you should be able to fix up. Read the question paper repeatedly. Because the facts will be very simple. It looks as though everywhere they are telling O2, CO2, RBC, HB, HB. So everything will have different number, PCO2, PO2. It will be simple facts. But you should know the facts clearly where it is connected with what. So otherwise, you will miserably you lose your 4 marks. Or if you answer wrongly, you will have a penalty mark also, you know that. So this is one question. Okay, in both. Now the same question I can make a tabular column. The amount of CO2 or O2 in RBC plasma, and I can match the following like we can give you. Or another important question is the one difference between the transport of RBC and oxygen and CO2. One difference if I ask you, which is not correct, incorrect statement. No, right, I'll give you a statement, then only you'll know. So choose the incorrect statement. Choose the incorrect statement. You should know your facts very clearly. This chapter is very simple if you know the facts clearly, very little only, lesser than other chapters. Choose the correct statement. First example will say, now A, B, C, and D. Let us take like this. Only one statement I can give correct or none of the statement may be correct. Okay, option will be none. If they all the three are. Now choose the correct statement. I will say maximum RBC is maximum O2 is carried as bicarbonate salt, HCO3 salt, CO3 salt, or maximum O2 is carried in RBC, or maximum O2 is carried in plasma, or maximum RBC O2 is carried by simple HB in RBC. Carried in HB in RBC. See, there is a click in RBC. If these two, which is the correct one, you have to see. These two similarly looks like RBC, HB. But when you do that, RBC has got two parts, the fibrin network and hemoglobin pigment. The body of the RBC does not carry, the network does not carry, only the chemical, that is the HB. So more appropriate answer will be HB in RBC. Correct statement questions are very, very tricky and very, very lucrative. You have to be, Neet is very easy if you know the facts clearly. Simple facts, no need for elaborate learning and elaborate essays. If you know the point correctly, you will easily score. It's like GK, playing the Sudoku in your papers, you play, like that only this is. But you should know exact answer, like fill in the blanks, you should learn and read it. So the incorrect statement, correct statement, because many amount they can ask in this itself. So only I have told mode of transport of these gases. Now you have a graph. We have a graph in which the saturation of HB by oxygen. That is oxyhemoglobin curve. Oxyhemoglobin curve. Now curve. There is no CO2 involved in this. But indirectly, oxygen association depends on CO2 concept, partial pressure of CO2. But in the graph, we are not taking anything, oxygen and hemoglobin, that's all. So you have x-axis and y-axis and x-axis if you take. Now here it will be saturation level, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. Now here, partial pressure of PO2. Let it be 10, 20, 30, 40. Before I explain, I'll just finish this with giving you the thing. Now the curve will be a sigmoid curve. Now that is the beginning of the curve, the ascent will be sharp. Only up till 10, 20, 30. Up till this is oxygen combination. How much of saturation of oxygen? How much it is getting saturated at which level? 70% saturation or 100% saturation. 100% saturation never comes. Now the curve shows how much amount of oxygen could be saturated or taken up by the HB. That's what in the saturation of HB. So the amount of O2 is known as partial pressure. So one line, this is y-axis and x-axis, they are showing partial pressure of O2 and it will be among Hg. The other side, how much saturation content, saturation level, 100% saturation, 10% saturation, it goes up to 100%. Never the saturation level reaches beyond 70, minimum 80% only maximum saturation. At that level, partial pressure will be more or less about 60 or 70, that's all. Between 60 and 70. You know very well how to study the graph. If I have a mark x-axis and y-axis, we'll write the x-axis for 70, 50 or 80. In ordered pairs, we write it like that. So, in a graph, when you mark the point, never 100% saturation of Hb does not come. Maximum saturation is 70 mm. Okay. Now, the partial pressure at that time will be between 50 to 60. So we will go over to this. There is the shift this is called Bohr's effect. You should know this, and then control other respiratory regulation. I'll see you next class. See you. Bye.